Yeah, so I was using sexual exploitation and drugs to band-aid. Again, just cover up that pain, cover up the abuse, cover up the lies, cover up the fear.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode on Coffee with Kuda. I am excited to introduce you to our next guest. She is currently working with a vulnerable population here in Surrey, BC, but her life story will blow your mind. I'll leave this for you to say. Kristi, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me here.
Man, we've been speaking for the last couple of weeks, and the stories you have told me, I'm excited to tell the world, just to show people how a life can be turned around regardless of what happens.
That's right.
Yeah. Tell me real quickly, where were you born and raised?
I was born in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and I lived there the whole time till I was about 11.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I had bounced around Canada with my mom. I went back to Nova Scotia at 16 and came back here at 24 and haven't left.
And you haven't left. So I know most of the conversations today are going to be based on some interesting things in your life. I know you were caught up in some criminal life, and then you were caught up in addiction. And there's a lot of trauma as well that you went through.
Yep.
And I will touch on that as well, and abuse that led to you working in the streets.
Yeah. First of all, like the dynamic I grew up in. I grew up in alcoholism and violence and addiction around me.
Right.
I had a few escapes from that, and I believe, like when I look back, today I'm a forgiving woman. So like I understand that my mom did the best she could with very little, right? So, but I was smart. Like I experienced molestation as a child from 8 to 11. And then I was raped at 14 and then again at 15. Wow. The person who was my first predator was actually my uncle. So my mother had told me, there was a history there of him being that person in other people's lives in our family. And so my mom had told me, like, I threatened him. I told him, like, if you ever touch my daughter, and she warned the family, don't ever leave him alone with her, blah, blah, blah. And, mom said to me that she would kill him. So why would I tell her when she would be at risk of leaving?
Whoa.
Like, there was that. There was many reasons why I didn't say anything. But then I got molested again at 11 by a different person. And that person was my gateway to say something. So I was waiting to go to my grandmother's, and I ended up telling the story. I told the story of this man who had touched me. My mom was asleep upstairs in our house, and I was downstairs in the living kitchen with him, and he always had a pocket full of change, like, and I'm 11, I want to go to the store. I wanted what was in his pocket. So right there, boom, I learned how to be a manipulator at 11 years old. I want that money out of his pocket. So I sat on his lap. So like, they say people are at fault for their actions, and sometimes they are, and that was a moment where I can look back and clearly say that I had ill intention that put me in harm's way. So, yeah, so then I told the story, and then after that, my uncle did not touch me again.
Okay.
Because he lived in the same house with my grandmother and my grandfather. So I was there quite often, and when he knew that I told the story of this other person, I think it clicked into him that he was next. So I didn't say anything about him. And I actually only spoke honestly about that for the first time in my life about a month ago when I was working through some 12-step work with my sponsor.
when a child's mind is already corrupted like that,
Yeah, it's kind of hard to teach them much else.
it's hard to teach them the opposite.
Yeah. There were people in my life, though, like
Yeah.
my aunt and uncle and my grandparents, especially my grandfather, who taught me some kind of decent moral fiber, you know, like you earn your money, respect your family, don't lie, don't cheat, don't manipulate, whatever, you know, like they tried to instill, you know, get an education, like, and none of their teachings kicked in until I was probably 30. You know what I mean? So like when I turned 29, I decided to go back to college. So like there was all these things that some of what they taught me stayed. And then there was things my mother taught me too that were pretty good too, but there was also a distance and an always constant fear that if I told my mom the truth about certain things that she would be gone. And alcohol took her away from me enough. You know what I mean? Like I didn't need her to be away from me more.
If your mom is an alcoholic and there's this life happening around her, it's difficult for grandma's advice to hit home.
Yeah. My mom was also, in this really sordid relationship with a woman from the time I was infant till I was about 7 or 8. And that woman was psychotic. Oh my God. Like,
Really?
there was things that happened there that were out of my mother's control. And so like, I experienced like mental abuse before I ever experienced sexual abuse, and that mental abuse did not come from my mother. It came from her partner. And this woman was also a dental hygienist assistant, so like those little red tabs that you use to teach kids to brush their teeth, like I would, you know, you eat one of them, I would eat like 4 or 5 of them. But it was what it was. So there was a carry-on. Like it was like I had a carry-on mentality from the time I was probably 5 or 6. It is what it is. Just keep going, right? So whatever's in front of me, I just kept doing what was in front of me, you know. So
I wanted to touch on now. I guess I will fast forward a little bit. We'll come back. The first time you started using substances, when was it?
first time substances, like my first substance was alcohol. I believe I was sipping that when I was really young. Started smoking when I was 9. Smoking full packs a day, I think, by the time I was 13 or 14.
Wow.
Yeah, I
14
smoked.
packs a
I think
day.
I smoked pot for the first time when I was 14, and I tried cocaine for the first time when I was 14 or 15.
Okay. This is in school?
Nope. No.
Who's introducing you to cocaine?
Older people that I would pursue.
Really, eh?
Yeah.
I think because you had told me you started, not that you started drinking, but you did have your first drink really young.
Yeah, my mom, I vaguely remember my mom telling me a story about, so like every time mom had a party, you know, like there would be nothing left out, and mom would stay up until it was all cleaned up, and there was a reason for that. And it was like, I think when I was like 2 or 3, you know, there was a wine bottle or I don't know, something on the table, and I drank it. And mom said I was passed out cold all night, and she was wondering if I was okay. Like she didn't know if I was going to be okay or not. So, yeah, that's a story. Yeah. So I think, yeah, probably around 2 or 3.
Ever since then, she was careful.
Yeah, she was careful to clean it all up. And it's always, my whole life it was like that.
Really?
Yeah, like there would be a monstrous, like, you know, maybe four or 5 people, but there would be like beer bottles like stacked everywhere, and get up in the morning, it was like no trace.
Yeah.
No trace.
I love it.
Except for the smell of stale beer and cigarettes. It's disgusting, but
So you get introduced to cocaine at 16 years old. How is school going for you?
what school?
Really?
That's pretty much how that went. I ended up, so like I got pregnant when I was 14, and you know, that was in Ontario. We had lived in Ontario, and I met Danielle's dad there. Danielle is my daughter. Anyways, I got pregnant at 14, and we moved to Winnipeg and then moved out here. And in that time, because it was so taboo to be pregnant as a teenager in the early 90s, it was like no regular high school would take me. And at the time, there was no programs like they have now for, you know, pregnant and parenting moms. So I went to alternative schools.
Okay.
So yeah, I went to a few alternative schools, and I was always really good in school. even in elementary. So it was almost like an escape, I think, you know, to be learning something and be around kids that were learning just like me. It was like a normal setting, you know, teachers saying, hey, and showing me the way. And yeah, so I didn't, I dropped out of high school and went to alternative school. And I ended up going back to high school, I think when I was like 18 to try, just to try. And by then I was back in Halifax. So it was really awkward. Like my mom had my daughter at that point, and so I was a little bit freer to, you know, go back to school and do normal teenager things, but I was not a normal teenager. Like by the time I was 17, I was like I was 30.
When was your next child born?
So my daughter was born when I was 15, and I had my son Tyler when I was 18. Yeah.
And your next one?
Michael, that's not his name anymore. That's what I named him. I had him when I was 19.
I understand you gave one of them up for adoption.
Yeah, I gave up my last child, and there was reasons for that. I did not want to have another fatherless child, you know, and I already had a child in diapers, and I was struggling to have a relationship with my daughter. And Danielle was only 3, so she was 3. Tyler was just over a year, so it was like there was no way. Like I was honest enough with myself to say there's no way that I can raise another child on welfare with no daddy, and like this isn't happening. So I offered him a better life, you know, and it was a struggle. I battled like after, like I remember the last time I held him in the hospital and looked at him, and it was almost like I had no maternal instincts at all when I was looking at him because I knew I was giving him away. But at the same time, what a gift. Because it taught me how to be selfless in a small way, right? So like he's getting really, you know, hopefully the upbringing that I could never give him, right?
Oh.
Yeah.
When you moved to this side, did you come with both children?
No, my mom had Danielle here, and I had Tyler.
Okay.
Only Tyler. So, so I was actually in a marriage that was. I met my husband at 19, so right after I had, you know, Michael and gave him up, you know, I met my husband, and, you know, that relationship it was amazing in the beginning because there was like, you know, he showed me that, like there was a camaraderie there between him and I, friendship and fun, and he had a son that was a similar age to Tyler.
Correct, yeah.
So it was kind of like an instant family. And we were together for close to 5 years.
Okay.
But yeah, at the end of that, it was so my dad died on 9/11 actually, not in the thing. Yeah. He had a heart attack, and then so when he had passed on, there are things in the background story of my life that are kind of like the precursor to this. So like, my relationship with my husband was very abusive, and you know, my dad had threatened him, you know, and so he didn't touch me for like a year, and then as soon as Dad died, it was almost like his permission slip to go back to that kind of abusive behavior. And I mean, I was no better because I was pretty crazy. He taught me how to be crazy, you know, psycho, and I also learned how to be a car thief in that relationship. But anyways, so I asked my grandfather to put me on an airplane. Pardon me, I left BC at 16, and I left the cocaine habit here.
Okay.
Which is really strange because you'd think that if, you know, you're addicted to something, you will chase it when you get elsewhere. But when I got back to Halifax, I did not.
Wow.
Yeah, and I stayed, you know, whatever clean is for, you know, 8.5 years.
Wow.
I didn't touch hard drugs at all.
Had you met anyone else completely different whose life was going to be clean, you could have been a whole different person.
Yeah. The possibilities on that one are endless, actually.
Right.
So, yeah, like he like I said, he was really charming in the beginning.
Yeah.
And everything moved really fast. And, you know, we got married a couple years later. And, yeah, it was just, I don't know how to explain it. Like he would, you know, we were both verbally, mentally, and physically abusive to each other. you know, I would get mad at him for the certain things. I'm like, we have kids, what are you doing? And like, I believed in, I still believe in the commitment of marriage. I really do.
Right.
So like, you know, at 20, 21, 22 years old, I'm trying to scramble my belief systems and it's not working. So the more I'm trying to control the situation, the angrier I'm getting.
One question I like to ask, and I like this answer to be clear to everyone, is that why does someone stay in an abusive relationship?
Oh, self-worth. We feel that we're not worth anything else. We don't know that anything else exists. And when you come from the background that I came from up to that point, it seemed normal. For me. For some people, it's a years of breakdown, right? For me, I was already broken when I got into that relationship. Like mentally and emotionally, I was already pretty flatlined, I think. So he kind of was like a life bringer. So there was kids and stability, and stability was something that I lacked most of my life. So I craved that. So I tried to, but also being a control freak as well, I tried to control him, our home, who we hung out with, what we, you know, it was really lots of jealousy, lots of insecurity, lots of, you know, mania, almost like mania of things. Like he wanted a mother and I wanted a husband. Like it was just like, there was all this scratchy in there. And so in that, you know, when I left him, I had to do it on the sly, you know.
2 minutes a second. One thing I wanted to say thank you for explaining is because the lack of understanding, which leads to judgment. People are like, why are you with him? Why do you stay? Right? It's because of our lack of understanding of how the person is feeling and is needing that one person who is bringing stability, right? We don't see it, but that's how you're feeling inside. So I do appreciate you explaining your reasoning of staying, but you did manage to escape.
Well, it wasn't even that it was an escape. It was just like, so once Dad died, there was a threat. You know, there was a new threat, a threat of more violence and a threat of, you know, being Daddy's girl. He wasn't there to protect me anymore, right? So, you know, it took me about 6 weeks. I had phoned my grandfather and I said, listen, I was like, I need a plane ticket. I want to go to BC to be with my mom and my daughter. So the ticket will be for me and Tyler. And I said, I promise you I will never come back. And my grandfather, of course, questioned me, well, what about your husband? I said, what about him? I'm leaving him. You know, he's abusive and I'm abusive to him. Like, I got to go.
You haven't seen him ever since?
I've seen him one time in person since then, and that was when my mom was in the hospital.
Oh, because he had to go back. Right. How was it?
Uncomfortable. He had a new son. And we were talking about getting divorced, and there was a situation when we were together where I went and had a tubal ligation so I could have no more kids. So I was kind of jealous of that. You know, like, like I had a tubal ligation at like 21 years old, and, you know, totally ripped myself off for that relationship. And then to see him with a son, it was really, it was an ugly one for me. So I've had to come to terms also with the fact that I cannot have any more children. So like there's this whole thing, like there's many little pieces and aspects to who I am and what's created me. And
oh my gosh. Talk to us through your life here in BC now that you've escaped, you've left your husband.
I was really relieved to be with my daughter and my mom again, even in spite of there was lots of resentment there and anger on my end towards my mother, but it only came out, I think, when I was drinking. So me and my mom drank a lot together, but I ended up getting hooked in with a couple of my brother's friends from work, and out came the tray of cocaine one night, and that was it. So I hadn't touched cocaine since I was 16, and at 24, when I sneezed, it snowed, for sure. Yeah.
Wow.
And that set in motion another train of events. So I managed it for a while. I lost a few jobs from my cocaine and alcohol abuse over the years after that. But yeah, like my mom and I lived together, and you know, I ended up getting my own place a few times, and there was never real stability, ever, not for me or my kids. Like you know, constant moving, you know, and or constant, you know, attempting to be in relationships and not being able to be successful at it because I was so messed up myself that there was no hope, right? I didn't know how to articulate my feelings and thoughts to share with another human being on a healthy level.
Correct.
Not like I do today.
Yeah.
Today is different.
What do you think the biggest difference is?
My guts have been torn out and rebuilt and put back in. Like that's, you know, after my life didn't get super real bad until I was in my 30s. So it was a late bloomer on some stuff.
Really?
Yeah. So, you know, the autoimmune disease that I have, fibromyalgia, that caused me to, you know, take some Tylenol 3s, but I was not an opiate addict by any means. And I was put on methadone for pain management at 29 years old to be able to go to college and function physically properly, right? That was the beginning of like a massive downfall. Like it just kept on going. And yeah. So I don't know, I went to college, I graduated, I got off methadone at, I don't know, 31, I think. And from there, from 31 to 40, so there was a 9-year window of chronic attempts at getting clean, chronic attempts at controlling and managing being an addict. I've been to parties, I was exposed to heroin. I was like, oh, let me try that, you know. I had a garbage can mentality. If it's in there, I'm taking it.
Wow.
That was it. So I've been addicted to Dilaudid, Percocets, Oxycontin, heroin, cocaine, crack, crystal meth, and everything in between.
What's very fascinating to me is your opiates addiction came through
From methadone.
from methadone, which was a method of treatment
For pain, yeah.
for pain.
Yeah.
And this was at 29 years old.
Yeah. If we speak of trauma, right? Like today I'm way more educated on these things than I was at the time, right? But if I knew then what I know now, and if there was anyone else with my similar story, it's like when you're diagnosed with something like that, they go back in your family history and they ask you questions. And he took a timeline of my life and he said, Kristi, this is probably onset from early childhood trauma and continued, you know, abuse, right?
This is the fibromyalgia, correct?
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. So treat the trauma. You know what I mean? Like I could have had counseling. I could have started therapy then, you know, because since I have been healing, like going to counseling, and I went to treatment a few times for trauma and things like that, and grief and loss and all that. And the more I review to heal, the less I have a problem with physical pain. I have not been medicated for a long time.
Wow.
So, you know, it's yeah, it's a thing. It's a real thing.
It's powerful education because
Yeah.
trauma-informed care
That's number one.
It's really important, right? And nursing, under my understanding when talking from other psychiatry nurses from England, this has been practiced for a long time. If you deal with the problem, the underlying trauma, you will find that the healing does help with things like fibromyalgia,
100%.
right? Not too many people would comprehend that. That's insightful. That's very important.
Yeah,
and
it's
I'm
super
glad
important.
you shared that.
Because my trauma started very early. So, you know, today I can pinpoint and, you know, I'm actually learning to have more honest conversations with my mother.
Right.
Instead of being full of blame and projection, I can actually say, like, here's what happened and here's what I've done about it today. And I just want you to know, in case you were confused at why I acted the way I did, well, let me tell you, here's why. And today it's kind of like, I have a lot of comfort in knowing that I I have the power today within myself to seek the help. I see a counselor once a week. I talk to my doctor every 2 weeks. I have another trauma counselor. So like I'm keeping the flow of healing happening so that I don't fall back into, because it can happen.
And
I've done it many times.
Wow.
Where I've fallen back and prey to my, dirty talking mind, right?
I do know that you had informed me that now that you know and your understanding of trauma, you did start working in the streets. And
did.
your understanding of it was because you were sexually abused at a young age. And quote unquote, you had said that I knew how to control men.
Yeah, I learned how to control men very young.
Very young.
So I don't think that really played a huge role until I was probably 35. So when I came home from New Zealand, I was another level of trauma altogether there. I got off the plane and I think within 3 hours I was smoking crack. And within a week I was posting ads on Craigslist.
After the New Zealand trip?
Yeah, so I was using sexual exploitation and drugs to band-aid. Again, just cover up that pain, cover up the abuse, cover up the lies, cover up the fear. I lived in another country 17,000 miles away from home and had nothing. So I was completely alone, struggling, and worried that I would never make it back home, right? Like those fears were there.
That is incredibly frightening, I think. What, of course, what I know people don't know is the New Zealand trip, right? We are slowly running out of time.
Yeah.
But I do want to touch on your experiences of, you found love again when you were here in BC, right? And your husband moved to New Zealand. I'll let you tell the story yourself. But maybe viewers need to understand, when you say that you were covering this pain, what could lead to that point. And of course, you don't have the tools to help yourself, right? So you just go to what you've always known.
Yeah.
Actually, since being born really in an alcoholic family.
Well, he actually wasn't my husband. He was just a boyfriend.
Okay.
But we met in 12-step recovery.
Right.
Through other people. I actually had moved into a basement suite and I was having a housewarming, so this guy popped up and he was, another domesticated man, with children and an ex-wife, and he seemed to know how to cook, so I was like, okay, well, so we just started talking, and we were together for a couple of years before we went to New Zealand. He went there and then I followed, so they paid for me to go down there.
Wow.
And I landed in Auckland, New Zealand with, I was desperately sick because I was wired to heroin at the time. And I detoxed there, but I don't remember. I woke up in Auckland Hospital in a room that had padded walls and a nurse guarding the door. From BC to Auckland, it's like a 17-hour, 18-hour flight, and I did my last hit of heroin in the bathroom at the airport.
Wow.
So when I went through customs, I was very sick, diarrhea, cold sweats. I was shaking and squeezing my butt cheeks together like, God, please, I just need to get through this. And the woman's taking her time going through all my things, unzipping everything. And so I go through customs and I get to the domestic terminal, and I had 20 glasses of wine. And
on the flight?
No, waiting for my next flight that I never got on. Yeah, so I still to this day do not know what happened after I came out of the bathroom at the domestic flight terminal. All I know is I woke up on a mat in a floor of a room with padded, like there was padded walls and a nurse at the door kind of guarding me. So my partner at the time had to come. He had to drive 4 hours from where I was supposed to land
right,
to pick me up in the hospital. And that was the beginning of my 9-month adventure in another country.
If you speak to anyone who's been addicted to opiates, right, they do say they are the worst of withdrawals. Of course, alcohol is bad as well, but
well, I would say opiate withdrawal is a close second to alcohol withdrawal.
absolutely.
Like, and I've done that cold turkey many times, and it's very, very uncomfortable. But
To his understanding, when he left,
I was clean.
you were clean. What causes the relapse when your boyfriend is away?
Being alone, fear, anxiety.
What is he saying? You lied to me, how dare you? Or
No.
is it, we can work through this?
Yeah, he was like, you're going to be okay, babe. It's like, not a big deal. And he would sleep it off, and he would bring me soup, and he would try to just keep me comfortable, right? And at that point, it's kind of too late, because what are you going to do, send me back? You know what I mean? Like, he's not sending me back. So, I don't know, about a week later, I came out of it, and I was good, and we went to a pub, and he got really drunk, and he ended up hitting me for the first time. So he waited to show me his true colors until we were 17,000 miles away. And it wasn't the first time.
The 2 years you were here with him,
Were great.
He never hit you?
Nope. Not once.
and he was sober because you met in a...
He was sober, yeah. So him drinking, I believe, brought out the beast in him, because he did it only when he was drinking.
Do you think when he was away in New Zealand he started drinking, or was this the first time he started drinking?
No, he was drinking before that. So I was using substances and he was drinking. So neither one of us knew
Wow.
until the other was back in each other's presence. So by then we were both kind of too far gone. So we both drank together. And I found drugs down there too. Yeah, I found crystal meth there.
So you find crystal meth and you're drinking with him, and the relationship is abusive. Do you at a certain point just realize that this is not going to work, I have to run home?
No, I was stuck.
You were stuck.
Well, I was financially dependent upon him, and I was on a partnership visa, so it made it really hard to bust a move to get away until the police got involved. The police, he beat me up bad enough that I ended up in the hospital, and the police, they wiped out the medical because I had no medical. So they listed it as an accidental situation. So it gave me traveler's coverage. And so, yeah, I ended up, the few people I did meet in New Zealand actually housed me and helped me. And I had a girlfriend here in Surrey who started a Facebook group called Bring Kristi Home. So they managed to get the money together to get me a plane ticket to come home.
We have to talk about what happens when you get here. I know that you come home deeper into addiction.
Yeah.
And then you realize ways to make more money. So you start working in the streets.
Yeah. I've had homelessness.
You have homelessness. I know you were raped as well.
Yeah. I was, gang raped, and my son was killed after that. So,
Your son was killed after that.
so there's a 5-year more story to go.
I'm looking forward to you sharing your story more, so that it brings that further understanding and people to just have a deeper realization of what other individuals go through.
Yeah, it's pretty deep stuff for some people, and then I think the biggest part of this whole thing is knowing that there's a bounce back. There's a bounce back from all the trauma if you want it.
If you want it.
Yeah, because lots of people need it.
You say that you go to the bottom and then you go an elevator even further to the
Oh
bottom.
yeah, if the gutter had a basement with an elevator, that's where I came out of, for sure.
But you came out of it.
Yeah, there's a bounce back button if you
I love
want
the
it.
hashtag we do recover.
Yeah, we do, because we do. I still am recovering.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's end it here.
thank you.
We have plenty more to
Thanks,
talk about.
Yoda.
It was really good to see you
You're
again,
awesome.
okay?
Yeah,
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cheers. Hey everyone, thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. I do really appreciate it. If you can, please subscribe to our channel for more content. If you can, please join our Patreon team. The link is down below. And also you can join our GoFundMe. The link is also involved below. This will help us to bring awareness of addiction as well as destigmatize this illness. Your support is greatly appreciated and we'll create more content for you. Thank you so much.